the Demon Core was it's fascinating, and I am. Oh, what is this doing? No, it's supposed to be playing that. There we go. And the other thing was is that I kind of wanted to like much like today's episode, I wanted to make the Demon Core episode like a multiple um like multiple incidents. I didn't want to just stick with the one
Okay.
because because again it got really silly really quick when again beyond Madame Madame Marie Curie and her messing with radiation stuff like that like it's just a shocker how long it took for people to realize the I guess scariness of what uh, radiation can do to people.
Sure.
But
Don't fuck around with it.
no, I'm not necessarily a fan. I was also considering covering 3 Mile Island, but like that's not weird as much as it's more tragic, you know. Or
Did anyone get hurt?
um, depends on who you ask.
Okay.
There's been later reports of birth defects and cancers amongst residents the near the nuclear plant.
Okay.
But again, I can't verify like names or anything like that as of right now. But like because I don't have any notes about it in front of me, but it is super fascinating how much these nuclear companies continue to get away with it. I mean, look at like Fukushima. That's the other thing is that like I feel
Oh
like
right.
covering both of those would just be a little too much
That's a
for.
that's a real doubleheader. Yeah, that's a real fun.
That's a fun time. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Instead, well, I mean, these ones are still fairly tragic, but the and I don't know. I'm gonna have to figure out what I'm gonna call weird about it because I think it's more weird that there were no better regulations in place when you got somebody sitting there with a screwdriver. Uh, what was the saying? Tickling the tail of the dragon, I believe is what they called it when they played with the Demon Core. But
Yeah.
yeah, we'll
Yeah.
cover all that next week. I think this should be an interesting one. By the way, just out of curiosity, have you ever finished Cuphead,
Yeah, totally.
dude?
There's new shit out though.
I know. So I'm in the process right now of trying to beat the devil.
Never done it?
I have never done it. I can't even get past the dice guy. Like,
Oh, I mean, that's the worst part. The dice guy
yeah,
is the worst part.
the
The
the the
devil is
lead
not the
the,
worst.
the lead
Yeah.
up to the dice guy is like the absolute worst.
It's terrible. You got to figure out which ones are the easiest ones for you to know, and
Mm-hmm.
then you got to master the dice. I mean, that's my advice. My
Mm-hmm.
advice is decide how you're going to do the board and then figure out how to get the dice to land where you want it every single time and
Mm-hmm.
then do the board how you're going to do it. But
Yeah,
that's the worst part.
the one thing
100%.
the one thing that got me each time was like I don't know if it's again I smoke when I play, so I don't know if it's me, but I
Yeah,
can't
who knows what is even happening.
but like the fucking parry, dude. I cannot I cannot parry for the life of me on that dice at the right time. I have my moments. I have like, my clutch moments where I don't think I'm gonna make it, then I hit the spot. They like somehow the Cuphead gods have forgiven me and given me my 2 slots so I can get the extra HP, and then I'm screwed. I end up like throwing it on a nothing burger, and then I have to go against the what's call it the roulette wheel lady.
That's a bad one.
That
That's
is a
one that I avoid.
that's the worst one. Like thankfully, like the little smoke bomb thing helps, but it's just yeah, it's a little
There's a
too
bunch that
much.
are. I mean, a bunch of them on that wheel. The booze number one. I actually no. I think I definitely. I think the booze might be one of the worst ones. I do the chips. I think I do the chips and maybe yeah. There's like a domino on a swing with like a conveyor belt with spikes. Maybe we throw in D20s. Is it a domino?
Oh yeah, the domino one is like one.
There's
Yeah.
something with spikes on a conveyor belt coming at you.
I can actually roll through that one pretty quickly, but
Yeah, so figure out the ones you're good at, and then figure out how to make the die land where you want it to.
that's yeah. The making the die land where you want it to is where it lies. It's extremely difficult though. I
Once you get like you can get it. You
well, you
can
can
like
get it
watch it.
once you like you really sit like
You
I
gotta
I
really
I
I mean I stared at it. Like
I feel like
I went into a state.
God, who's the actor in Rain Man? Not Tom Cruise, but
Dustin Hoffman.
Dustin Hoffman. I feel like Dustin Hoffman's character like counting two, 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 watching it spin, 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 two, two.
And you'll figure out that rhythm. That's what you
Yeah,
do. If you
yeah,
know that
that's
you
what
want to, you'll figure out two, 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 and you'll figure out where in that rhythm to hit it. You'll figure it out.
it's yeah. Oh, by the way, the tunes are working okay for the podcast. How are those been working out?
Yeah, terrific.
Excellent. Glad you dig them. Like I've been I've been trying to think about what to do next with like doing music and throwing it into gameplay just for funsies. But
Okay, that's a good idea.
yeah, I don't know,
Liven
man.
things up with whatever you can create, you know?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm hoping to do. That's why I'm trying to get myself rolling every single day. I try to get my coffee in. I try to uh have like a routine. I try to like I try to go out on my balcony with my cat a lot. That's
Good. That's a
yeah,
good thing to do.
yes, she enjoys it. She's never been like she was a street cat, but she never really liked going outside or never really tried to run outside. But she loves that balcony. She'll hang out with me and just bask in the sun. And when I'm done smoking my cigarette, she'll yell at me to not go inside. It's pretty
Oh
cute.
yeah.
Oh yeah, like I go open the door and she just kind of gives me this like hey meow, like hey exclamation point meow. Like what the hell are you doing? Turn back around.
Yeah, what's up? Yeah.
Yep. No. No. Any oh how are your cats doing? How's Paprika?
Prega's chilling. They're all upset that there was thunder.
Oh no.
Seems to have calmed down now, but there was some very loud thunder. Everyone hid in the cabinet except I bet I could see Cora somewhere. Yes, I see Cora. Cora's brave. She did not
Hmm.
hide in the cabinet, but the other two go right into the kitchen cabinet and hide from the thunder.
Hmm. Fair enough.
But they're all, horrible monsters, spoiled monsters.
Little spoiled monsters. And the
They know.
oh god, what was quarantine cat's name again? I totally forgot.
Oh, Philip.
Philip. How's Philip doing? Any
Philip
more
is
health
a
issues or?
spoiled little monster. No, he's doing fine.
Well, that's good.
Absolutely. He's with my mom. He's absolutely a spoiled little monster.
Oh, moms do that with cats.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all about the extra treats and such. My mother was kind enough to give my cat a scratching post for Christmas this past year.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's delightful.
yeah. Well, besides the fact that my cat just loves tearing her claws into everything, I thought giving her a better scratching implement would probably help her out. I was using like the cardboard ones for a while.
Sure,
Didn't
sure,
really
sure.
work out. But let's see here. I got all my stuff set up. My beeps are booping.
Your
Uh,
beeps are booping and bopping.
yep.
Your bops are boppering.
I got my notes. I'm 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 stoned. I'm here. I think it's time to hit the music. What do you say?
Yeah, sounds like it.
All right, game on, folks.
I got I got a lung full.
One full of. Yes, I do smoke pot as well. Yes, yes. Now it's yeah. No, I get that where you get the hacking coming in,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
but anyway, yeah, gang, welcome. Happy Tuesday. I apologize for my demeanor. I'm extremely exhausted. Um, it's been a long couple of days. I don't know about you, Kuya, but like I know you do your soap thing. Like I've been trying to find like my little thing lately, and
Yeah.
yeah, I've been trying to I've been looking into gigs, and
Cool.
yeah,
That's a cool thing that can be a little thing.
yeah, I was looking into gigs, and I you know nobody ever reads a newspaper anymore. That like everybody believes
No,
that
why
print is
would
every
you?
yeah I know right newsprint is dead, but it just so happened on this day.
Why would you read the newspaper when you got Twitter?
Well, it just so happened that the that somebody had a Sunday paper that they just let roll down the street, and it flew into
Oh,
my face, and it was a sign. It seemed.
that's strange.
Yeah. It was an ad for
That
for a.
sounds like something that happens to like a cartoon rabbit.
I know, right? Isn't that bizarre?
A real
yeah. It was.
inciting incident if I've ever heard one.
I know it definitely put things in motion for me that day. It was
All
very
right,
bizarre.
good.
I never believed in fate until just now. But
Shit, what happened in scene one? What
so
happened in the first
in
act?
scene one, so yeah, I basically get this gig. It's a psychological experiment where all you do is just rub butter on yourself. It was a very bizarre experiment, and the head of this experiment was even weirder. I actually took a picture of the events here. Actually, hold on.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
it's a
know, I know. You don't even have to show me.
no. So yeah. It was this
I
guy.
know, I know what we're about to look at.
So it was this guy right
Oh,
here.
that guy was putting butter on himself.
Oh
Did he have a
yeah.
friend? No one else there putting butter?
No, but that actually puts us to our next point. You were
Is that the
expecting
same
you
room?
hmm? No, that's not the same room in Montauk. That was a completely different room.
I saw this. Are you sure? It looked the
That
same to me.
it looked really similar, right?
Do you
But
just have one? Do you have a stock photo of a dirty basement that you like to use?
I just in my back pocket just have a stock photo of a
Right.
dirty basement. But
It seems.
but what were you so just for my notes here. So what were you expecting to be there?
You know who I was expecting to be there. A,
Yes,
s-
this baguette.
a man of a sort of man of a French persuasion.
Indeed. So you were expecting me to throw out the baguette again.
Yeah. Yes, I was.
Now, Kuya, I don't mean to alarm you, sir, but I just wanted to inform you that this has all been a gigantic experiment. I've been
Oh,
hired,
including the butter,
including the
or
butter,
this whole thing with the whole baguette.
this whole experiment. So actually, the butter experiment was actually a lie to see how you would react because I knew you were expecting the baguette, but instead I threw a corn at you.
Yes, you did throw a corn at me.
Yeah.
I've been corned.
Again, yeah, just don't get that down there. So it was corn. So it's my understanding that again, you believe that that baguette was going to be there, despite the fact that as much as I seem to throw that joke very often, like I'm shocked that you were still expecting the baguette. That completely threw me off my my whole experiment here. So this actually leads into the discussion for today, the Stanford prison experiment. Starting with that at least, and then we also are going to be covering a very interesting subject, the Robbers Cave experiment, which I think we discussed earlier that you had never heard of, right?
I don't think so.
But I'm not really working for the U.S. government and doing a psychological experiment. I promise. That was all part of the it was all part of the show.
Involving baguettes?
No, just the corn.
Oh,
But the
wait.
corn was a lie.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyhow, so again, we're talking about experiments in changing perceptions again. It's all about a sense of who controls what. And we're going to start with talking about this particular experiment. This was the Milgram experiment. I think we talked about this in our coverage of uh, the show. Oh, what was the not John the Nathan Fielder show? What was that show that we watched?
The
I just
rehearsal.
the rehearsal. We talked about this experiment in the rehearsal. It was a again, it was initially an experiment where like doctors would make people give shock what they believe to be
Oh,
increasingly larger shocks to an actor who wasn't connected to anything,
right.
but
Who
um,
is shrieking?
who was shrieking in pain and begging for mercy. And despite that, the doctor said to keep going, keep going, keep going, don't stop, don't stop. They just crank it up to 11, and they could have potentially exploded somebody like Green Mile style, and they wouldn't have thought anything about it. It's within this experiment that we kind of use as a basis to responding to authority that we cover. Let me click over here. This gentleman right here. This is Dr. Philip Zimbardo. So he is the lead researcher of the Stanford prison experiment. He's basically given money by the U.S. Navy to study the dynamics of prisoners and guards, uh, and basically how the power dynamics work within in that, and try to figure out better de-escalation tactics and so forth with prisoners of war, so forth. Uh, it was around 1971 that this gentleman right here put out an ad in a paper, like a local paper around Stanford, seeking students, uh, preferably 21 years of age, that were, uh, oh goodness, now I just lost my train of thought here. It was basically male students that wanted to be involved in an experiment about prisoners and guards.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it paid $15 a day, which is not bad for those times.
Shit, that's not bad for.
Yeah, that's not bad
That's
for
pretty
these
bad.
times. That's the
That's
sad
pretty
truth.
bad.
But
Yeah. I mean, if you can get it, good for you.
I wish I could get
15 bucks an hour a day is bad.
$15 a day is terrible. But in those times, it was pretty nice to have.
It was pretty okay.
It was pretty okay for what they were asking. As far as the prisoners understood, they were just going to be doing a simple, role-playing psychiatric thing, and they thought that they would just be sitting in their bunks studying and reading. But again, they really wanted to hit home that realism to the incarceration. So this experiment took place around it took place on August 14th to the. It was supposed to take place till the 21st, but it only lasted 6 days. And it revolved around around the understanding of the power structure between prisoners and guards, power of roles, rules, symbols, and group identities. 75 people were interviewed that put in applications, and 18 were picked, and they were given random assignments. Whether it was they were picked at random, whether they were prisoners or guards. Nobody got to pick what they wanted. Basically, they had 12 people there at all times, and then they had like 3 spares of each characters, so to speak, uh, which will come in handy later. Uh, let's see here. So what was really interesting about this experiment and kind of out of the ordinary for, I guess, would be considered to be ethical, medicine. Zimbardo
Okay.
here decided to be the superintendent of this imaginary jail that he was setting up.
Right.
And he also cast his research assistant to play as the warden in the experiment. And
Mm-hmm.
again, it's basically considered to be one of the more controversial. It's beyond the emotional damage that these people had dropped onto each other, but more that it was kind of instigated within the people who were supposed to be researching this experiment. Uh,
Okay.
but so basically the guards were instructed to just make sure the prisoners didn't escape and pretty much nothing else. They basically told them to, keep them from running and, keep the, things going in an orderly fashion. And they were given a little bit of training on how to be like prison guards, and
Authoritative.
given the, like the they're given that warrior training, so to speak. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, they were each given similar uniforms, much like you would see from other prison guys. They were given mirrored sunglasses, so that way they could cut off eye contact with the prisoners. So it kind of gave them this kind of inhuman feeling, which I didn't realize was an actual tactic used within the prison system. That
Sure.
I found really fascinating. But yeah, at the end of the day, though, according to the researchers, they said they never told the guards how to run the facility. Uh, but yeah, the only thing they were only ever told to do was to keep things in order. The prisoners, on the other hand, were told. Whoops. Prisoners, on the other hand, were told that they would not be subject to any physical abuse, but would lose their civil liberties still within the spectrum of this experiment. This would assure a realistic environment for incarceration. Prisoners were subject to a realistic arrest, as we see here, and booking process, which was done in association with the Palo Alto Police Department, where they took mug shots, took fingerprints, put them in holding until they were able to get a transfer to the jail. And all of the people that were being picked up here, none of the families were really told anything about this experiment, other than that they're technically going to jail, and they were all charged with armed robbery, and they were all again taken to the Palo Alto Police Department. Uh, Let's see here. So the prison was set inside of this place. This was Jordan. This is Jordan Hall. Uh, there's a basement facility that they used for their holding for their jail cells, because there was no real sunlight coming through and there were no clocks on the walls. All they had was
Okay,
fluorescent lights. It would
good.
disorient them. They
Yep.
couldn't tell what time it was. Um, let's see here. It was, yeah, again, it was cut off enough that inmates could not tell what time it was, thus disorienting them into submission, basically. There were 3 cells each. Each cell was about 6 by 9, with a within the same area there was a closet that was supposed to be used as like the hole. And then there were some outside offices. Mind you, these were like study rooms. There were other outside offices that were used to hold the warden, superintendent, and the guards.
Sure.
Uh, upon arrival, the inmates were stripped naked and sprayed down with spray deodorant to basically mimic the feeling of being deloused at a jail. Um, and inmates were given mugshots, numbers, and were told that we're not allowed to use real names anymore, and that they would only
Okay.
respond to their numbers. They're given jumpsuits, a bunk, and they were fed daily meals. Uh, inmates were assigned work, exercise, and they were allowed visiting time twice a week from a family member. Again, this was only supposed to last a week, so they got 2 visits within that week. Um, let's see. Oh, there were. I wish I found I completely lost the picture that I had of this, but there was a picture of how they actually set up the microphones and cameras against the sides of the cells, and I gotta tell you, like it's funny to me because when I was reading some of the testimony from the prisoners, they were saying that they could hear the researchers like yelling at each other to zoom in and catch something that was like exciting for the experiment. And they could also hear them commenting about like each individual guard and inmate. It's it's pretty damning. But yeah, they use
Yeah.
microphones and camera to document the entire experiment. Yeah, it was ridiculous. And mind you, this was just orientation, and they're all brought into their cells and they're told to go to bed. Day one basically came and went, and all it was Zimbardo explaining everything and how it's going to be for them, and what the hierarchy is. Um, the very interesting thing about this though is that because the inmates didn't have guard enough guards for the night, they would have to urinate and defecate into utility buckets because they were locked inside of those rooms and they weren't allowed to walk themselves to the bathroom. And when they were walked to the bathroom, they were blindfolded and let out so they wouldn't see where they were at. And again, not too much incident with that, but that was accepted, but it gets worse, as per everything we talk about on the show. Uh, day two started with a really rude awakening the next morning by the guards. Uh, they basically started banging on the bars with their billy clubs and screaming, yelling at them, "Get up, get up!" Oh, I lost them. Hello.
Oh.
Whoa, what just happened there?
Well, I think that my internet went away.
That was weird.
I was, yeah, and I guess yeah, just for, we're having like a storm, so it's not
Oh,
super surprising. But I
fair
was
enough.
about to get up and unplug it and plug it back in. But I think, yeah, just my internet just went out for, like 2 minutes,
All
whatever
right.
that was.
Yep. No, no, it was like 30 seconds. You're fine, bud.
Okay.
But anyway, day two starts with a rebellion from the prisoners. They proceed to block their cell doors with their mattresses and and basically begin just being all out, like defiant. Uh, they began taking their inmate numbers off, and the guards, who were absolutely fed up with how early in the morning that it was, despite the fact that it was their fault for, you know, prodding the entire situation. The guards went up to the bars and began spraying fire extinguisher into the cells to calm down the
Wow.
riot.
That's a good idea.
Terrible. Uh, yeah, it basically was stated that by one of the guards after that incident that he was recorded saying that the inmates were actually dangerous, which is frightening for, you know, some sort of a role playing exercise here.
Yeah.
Um, so we're going to talk about one of the first people to sneak out of this experiment. So this is prisoner 8612. I completely forgot to write down his name, but I think it's for the best so that way I don't know if he wants to still be associated with this, but we'll just stick with the
It's for
number
the
here.
best, sure,
Yeah.
yeah.
But on a day and a half into the experiment, 8612 here ended up showing signs of a mental breakdown. Um, the thing was is that because Zimbardo was such an asshole and he really wanted to get this experiment done, he basically looked at him with some skepticism. He's like, "Dude, you're faking this. I can tell you're faking this." And he basically, you know, conceded to the kid and was like, "Okay, listen. I will give you better accommodations and I'll like all you have to do is just be an informant for us and the guards."
An informant.
Yeah, you know, just
Okay.
to spice the experiment up, you know. But again, this experiment doesn't even have an independent variable. So the student declines, and he's like, "Fuck this, I'm out," and he's like, "Go," basically foregoing his payment for the experiment, except for the days he, you know, worked.
Okay.
Um, what was it? 8612 said later that the experiment uh, that after the experiment, he admitted after the experiment that he had faked having a mental breakdown in order to get out of the experiment. But later interviews, I think this was in 2007, he exclaimed about how terrible the experience was and how much emotional trauma he faced. So who knows? He might have been, again, much in the similar fashion with police. He might have been coerced into saying that on the like um the exit interview. Who knows? But 8612 spot was given to a new inmate who ended up it being another spare that came out of the 18 kids that were assigned. And let's see here. Yeah, he was basically an informant for the researchers and the guards. And it's around this time after the inmate revolt that the guards decided that they needed to find some way to psychologically get in their heads and make them obey commands and follow orders. So the guards began telling the prisoners that they're going to give them they basically gave extra privileges, including giving their mattresses back as well as food that wasn't allowed in Gen Pop, uh, to three people who were like the least involved in the riot.
Okay.
And it's within these privileges that were given to these three inmates that it caused a major kind of schism amongst the other inmates, saying that, like, you know, oh, like, you know, you're gonna, you know, be a suck up, you're not gonna actually defy this stuff, you're, you know, you're gonna allow them to treat you like this. And it was, yeah, it caused a lot of problems amongst the prisoners and basically made them fight amongst themselves, just as the guards had hoped it would. So this one cell, though, yeah, it was like a privileged cell to positively reinforce the good behavior of the inmates by again returning their beds.
Sure.
Because I mean, who doesn't like a nice warm bed to actually sleep in? They were basically given like 12 hours to live in the good room. Uh, and this and yeah, it basically created this huge schism amongst them all. They just ended up in fighting and kind of succumbed to the will of the guards, uh, to certain degrees. Uh, Visiting time for inmates was only 10 minutes. Allowed only 2 visitors within the week, or you can get 2 people in the one visit, and was always under surveillance by an on-site guard. So you can exactly talk to your parents about really much anything, let alone have the time to do it within 10 minutes. Uh, Parents complained to the to Zimbardo basically, and was like, hey, our kids are looking really worn out and kind of sick, and
Jesus Christ.
can you do something about this? Like, we feel like we're gonna have to start getting lawyers involved. This is like real jail, and we need to go to real discourse. We can get lawyers involved. And he basically kind of poo-pooed it and was like, no, they're fine. They're adjusting. Uh, it was shortly after like one of the last visits that it was rumored that 8612 was going to come back and jailbreak everybody inside of the like in the cells.
There's really a lot of schemes going on
Oh
for
yeah,
this.
there's a lot.
This
There's a
was
lot going
this
on.
is 1 week that this took
This
place.
is all 1 week. Like fucking bare naked
Wow.
ladies 1 week. Uh, Zimbardo
The,
ordered the
the tunnel through
yeah,
the.
right. But Zimbardo, because of the rumored breakout, Zimbardo ordered the inmates to have bags put on their heads and be moved to the 5th floor of the storage facility. Then he ordered guards to dismantle the cells and clear it out and make it seem like it was just a regular room again. Zimbardo himself would sit outside for the 1 or 2 days that he kind of faked that the experiment was over. He would, be greeting whoever was trying to liberate the prisoners and be like, oh well, it's over. Everybody went home, so you don't have to liberate anybody. See ya. He basically kidnapped these kids, but at the end of the
Good
day,
job.
yeah. But at the end of the day,
Great job.
the breakout wasn't real. Like it
Okay.
was just something that uh, they kind of stirred up to make things interesting, I guess. Whoever started that rumor. It was kind of later within the experiment that the guards began refusing toilet time to the inmates, forcing them to use the utility buckets like full time as punishment, and would force them to do push-ups for
Oh
hours on
boy.
end without breaking rules or provocation, just to humiliate them. Uh, Inmates who wanted to rebel were quickly shunned and distanced by other obedient inmates in order to maintain good rapport with the guards. That sounds fairly common within the prison system. You got to comply, otherwise you're gonna get your ass beat. And it was lucky that they didn't allow the use of physical force, because then that would have been a whole different experiment then.
Oh
But
boy.
they still did some pretty terrible things though. Zimbardo during this time was told by colleagues that the experiment had been basically going way too far, and
Sounds like it.
yeah, many asked him for like the independent variable for the study, and he apparently could not answer. It was also said that his then girlfriend, soon to be wife, even came up to him after she was also a psychologist that worked on the at Stanford, and she came to look on study and saw how horrible it was, and she was like, I don't even know who you are anymore, and like threatened to leave him if he didn't stop the experiment.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So it's on the 6th day, not the 7th day, unfortunately, that due to threats of lawsuits from parents, exposure by colleagues, including his girlfriend, um, they ended the experiment. They gave the students the pay. Actually, excuse me, the experiment was 2 weeks. They gave the students the paid 2 weeks instead of the one, in hopes that the compensation would alleviate the tensions between people and there would be less lawsuits. Um,
Ah,
I know, ain't that something? Nothing
no.
surprising. Um,
That's a classic move.
yeah. Oh, and another, I ended up scooting some stuff around here. That was my apologies here. But there was another incident that I thought was really fascinating. Was what happened to this dude right here. This is a prisoner 819. So prisoner 819 was a was basically he was having a real hard time with everything, and he turns to Zimbardo and says like, "Hey, I think I need to get out of this. Like this is becoming way too much for me."
Okay.
And it basically came to a head when a priest came to talk to the inmates. And mind you, this priest was like a DC chaplain who worked at like a prison and knows how to talk to inmates and so forth. And prisoner 819 here refused to speak to the priest, instead demanding a doctor. When Zimbardo like confronted him about everything, he was basically brought to another room, given food, told him to calm down. Uh, it was at this point the guards were then forcing the inmates to, in unison, start yelling, "Prisoner 819 is a bad inmate," or "Prisoner 819 did a bad thing," repeatedly, which made this man.
Jesus Christ.
Which again, because of how thin the walls were, the researchers could hear them. They could hear they could hear the inmates yelling. So this dude has a breakdown, and he changes his mind immediately. He goes, "No, I'll keep going. I'll keep going. I'm a good inmate. I can prove I'm a good inmate." And Zimbardo, for the first time within this entire experiment, breaks his character, and he goes, "Bud, I'm I'm a psychologist. This is an experiment, almost like a get a grip sort of thing. But the reality is, you caused this
Yeah.
nonsense." But yeah, 819 is basically told that he's incapable of continuing, and he's let go. He's replaced with another inmate named 416. They then held parole hearings for the inmates, asking them that they would give up their earnings for the experiment to just be able to go home. They all answered yes. And as much as they promised that, they suggested that in the parole hearings, they continued the experiment. Uh, it's at this point 416, the new recruit, ends up rebelling against the guards and goes on a hunger strike. And 416 is immediately shot down by all the other inmates, saying, like, "Dude, stop your crap. You're getting us all in trouble. What are you doing?" 416 just continued on and continued his hunger strike until at least the guards came up and were trying to force feed him, as well as trying to get the other inmates in order to get privilege room, privileges. Uh, they would also have the inmates try and force feed him.
What the
Yeah,
fuck? This is terrible. Why are you telling me this story?
I I found it super fascinating, and I like
This is
psychology.
insane.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh yeah, and
This terrible man was played by Billy Crudup, I believe.
I don't think I actually saw that movie, but that was something that I was trying to find online somewhere, but I couldn't find it. But but yeah, 416 was basically given 3 hours of solitary confinement, despite the researchers, you know, training the guards to only give 1 hour maximum. This guy was put into a black closet for 3 hours.
That's fucked up.
Oh yeah.
That's really fucked up.
And again, on the sixth day, they canceled the experiment. And what's interesting is that, like, months down like, I believe it was shortly after this, they did like a little debriefing, and they also had like exit interviews between the inmates and the guards, but I was unable to find that. I saw like clips of it, but I was unable to find the full video to like really get down to the nitty gritty of what these people were saying about each other. But this guy in particular, I'd forgotten his name, but he basically stated that he had a kind of a real awakening because he didn't think that he was ever capable of doing something that heinous to somebody else. And it's within this that Zimbardo believed that the experiment wasn't about the personalities of the individual, but rather how the guards molded around the institution and the situation that they were in. It wasn't a complete. Ooh, Daddy. I mean, what? Oh, what's up, Tony? You goof.
What's going on, Tony?
But but yeah, it was later suggested by the guards in like further down interviews that they were actually told to act as within these kind of sadistic parameters, and the possibility that they weren't performing their duties properly would be messing up the research and would basically diminish their particular merit or of authority against the prisoners. Um, yeah, there was one guy in particular who like wasn't this guy. There was another mutton chop guy. I believe he was a guy who they deemed John Wayne. He,
Oh,
yeah, this one guard who was like the nastiest and most sadistic of all the guards. He apparently, uh, was it 416 when he did the exit interview? He wanted to talk to the John Wayne guard. Basically, told him like, dude, you are a fucking piece of shit, and I hope you know, I hope you really take a hard look at yourself after this situation. You're kind of trash. And the guy's like, "What? I didn't do anything wrong." It was like this bully mentality. Like it was part of the
yeah.
experiment. I was just doing like absolutely nonsense. But again, it was what it was, and
I'm doing good, Tony.
yeah, hope you're doing good, bud. Hope everything's been going well. But yeah, at the end of the day, that's pretty much what happened with the Stanford prison experiment. These people were practically tortured.
It sounds fucking terrible.
Hmm.
All humans are shit.
And
Flush them.
it was actually because of this experiment in particular that it was decided that they needed to make independent review boards for experimentation, for psychological experimentation.
Yeah, there should be some parameters probably. Someone should be keeping an eye on that
Some
shit.
restrictions, yes.
Yeah, it's really someone
Um,
should. Yeah, Jesus
Unfortunately,
Christ.
they did. but yeah, that was Stanford prison experiment, and this experiment that we're going to cover next,
Before we cover the next one,
yeah, we can pause here, yeah.
yeah, let me go get some drinks and take a
Oh
piss
yeah,
and
yeah, we will come
let me
back to
let me take
this.
a break. All
Yep,
right,
we'll take a 5 break,
awesome.
no problem.
This is terrible. I can't wait to hear about the next terrible thing.
And we'll be right back in a moment.
What a papa. Pikachu, Pikachu. Little dude, Pikachu. Look out. Here comes Paprikachu. Am am I deafened or I
I
feel like
think I
something's
deafened
go
myself.
Okay, there we go. All right.
Whoops.
I'm here. I'm here.
Mm-hmm. Here.
Okay, hi. What's
Yeah,
up?
that's up. I'm sorry. That was my fault. That's something that I do often. But yeah. So I ended up finding this on a random just a random trial through YouTube. I just love finding weird random things on YouTube. It just works the best for me. And this really intrigued me because I thought I had heard about like all like the really weird experiments that psychologists have done through the years.
Okay.
This one I've never heard of before. Are you familiar with so I think we already discussed this, but the robber's cave experiment. Um I don't know who like I don't think I've ever heard anybody discuss this one.
I don't think I mean, something about it sounds familiar, but I feel like I'm thinking about the prisoner's. It makes me think about the prisoner's dilemma for some reason.
Um it's not necessarily that, but it's more it was basically a study done by this guy here. This is oh goodness, I hope I'm not butchering the name here. Muzaffar Sharif.
Oh boy, okay.
Yeah. Um so Sharif here was a psychologist and he really wanted to do this particular study on a theory known as realistic conflict theory. He did three sets of experiments. He did one in 1949 where he basically took a whole group of kids, about 22 boys, and put them all into a integrated group and allowed them to make friends and everything else. And then eventually he would see who was making the most who was making friends and see where the connections were, and he would sever those connections by putting them in two separate groups. and thus creating this sort of in-group team mentality instead. And it becomes, you're the enemy, you're no longer the friend sort of concept. And it, a lot of kids ended up like getting into fist fights, and um, it basically did not end well for the kids. It was like Lord of the Flippin' Flies. They kept
Yeah.
on trying to kick the crap out of each other. And it wasn't until that they were brought together in a common goal to defeat a local softball team that
Okay.
the kids were actually come together like the fucking Sandlot, and and that was the first experiment in 1949. So what Sharif found out about this in this particular experiment is um, that two or more groups of people that are in search for similar resources are bound to have conflicts beyond status, religion, and discrimination. It's always going to be something to bicker about. Is basically what I think the
Wow, that's the thesis statement.
yeah. But what we
People like to fight with each other.
but what we also learn here, again going back to what Passad said, that in the most dire of circumstances we eventually come together no matter the differences. But you have to cause nuclear warfare to make it happen.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
Hmm.
but so they did one in 1949. He does another one in 1951, but he stops it immediately because he realizes that the experiment is failing early on. Uh, he blamed himself. He blamed the parameters that he set for the boys, and yeah, he just couldn't get it together. He could not put his thesis correctly. He could not get his little pawns to move the way that he wanted them to move. So
Okay. Okay.
um so he ends up getting enough money from I believe it was the U.S. Navy that gave him. No, it wasn't the U.S. Navy that gave him money. It was Yale that gave him money. Um, to basically take 22 boys, uh, all of them white, all of them around the same age, Protestant to parents, like yeah, they were pretty much all within the same demographic, the same social status, so forth. Um, but yeah, he basically decides that he wants to go look at Oklahoma in particular, and instead of just going to a school and getting people that already knew get kids that already knew each other, that would kind of muddy the experiment a little bit. So instead he gets like one kid from like multiple school districts, and they interview them. There's actually researchers that like go and sit out there and watch the kids play and see how they interact and see which one they want to actually pick. um
Okay.
but uh but yeah, they basically sat there and watched the kids play to just pick out who was going to go with them. And then once they compiled all the kids that they wanted to go through, they just needed clearance forms from the parents, which they got really easily because these researchers have doctorates. So
Sure.
they kind of got away with it, and that's including with the schools to which they got like the kids records and like grades and things like that, like real, like what would be considerable like privacy invasion sort of shit.
Uh
but
huh.
but so Sharif wanted to do this experiment over 3 stages over 2 weeks. The boys would live separately in log cabins, 11 each, right along the Moccasin Creek in Oklahoma. The two groups of boys are going to be initially unaware of each other, are going to be later integrated with each other. So the stages go as follows. You start with your in-group formation, which means uh, this is basically creating team bonds and making sure these individual groups of kids really bond with each other before they start setting out and uh, integrating with the other kids. They kind of create this like sort of rah rah tribal mentality. Um, this would ensure that the in-groups would be formed through a series of team building exercises and fun group activities. Stage 2 would be the conflict phase, which is the teams are introduced to each other and are given sets of competitive games to play against each other for small prizes. Stage 3 would be integration, which would be the two groups would be given a predetermined task to do to would be given a predetermined task to do together. This would occur without the knowledge of the part of the kids involved, and it would just be part of their daily activities. So first stage was basically set to start on June 19th, 1954. They got 2 buses worth of kids. So you got 11 kids in one bus, 11 kids in another bus. And these kids are already getting along together. Like each individual groups are getting along very well. And this is just on the bus ride in. Upon arrival, the teams were given instructions to make a team flag and motto for their groups. One of the boys named their team the let's see if I can pull this up. Oh, so this is where it would be at. This is Robbers Cave in Oklahoma. But what I wanted to show was this. These kids made their own flags and their own team names. The first set of kids were the Rattlers, and the only reason these kids were called Rattlers was it was named after the rattlesnake one of the kids saw killed by one of the researchers while they were out and about.
What?
Yeah, they saw this researcher, come across a rattlesnake and just kill it, and so they decided their team name was the Rattlers. The other team was called the Eagles because it was cool and mutually agreed upon by the other team. But the kids were sold hats and other accessories by the camp that allowed them to embroider their team names onto their clothing or whatever item that they got, and to create further in-group relations. So again, the kids were not meant to see each other, and the way that they set it up was they would have staggering schedules. So like one set of kids would be allowed to go to the lake and go swim, while another set of kids would go hiking on another side of the campgrounds, or they'd be doing some other activity. They were never near each other for about the first couple days.
Okay.
Actually, I think this was within the first week, right? If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it would be later in the week that the kids would see each other. I believe it was day 5, but it was within the moment that the boys were told of each other's existence that both groups were really interested in meeting each other and again trying to create more social contacts. The sometime within the first week, the boys were there were before that integration happened. 2 of the boys from the Eagles were sent home, and yet this didn't end up halting the experiment. And they didn't end up replacing the kids. So it was an uneven set of kids, which ended up creating more friction come the conflict stage, which actually made
The
this,
conflict stage.
yeah, for what they were describing as the conflict stage. Um, it basically made Sharice's job much easier for this experiment. Tensions between the groups were basically further exacerbated when researchers began noticing that the individual groups were noticing the individual groups talking styles when referring to items within the camp. They would generally refer to things as ours, as in within the groups. It's the Eagles, it's the Rattlers, it's this kind of West Side Story mentality. It's the Jets versus the
Okay.
Sharks. But the
Mm-hmm.
tensions further embroiled with the Rattlers as they had found the Eagles were using their baseball diamond, despite the fact that it was a public diamond. But they were still upset that these other kids were using their diamond when they weren't using it too. let alone.
Okay.
This was one of the first signs that the researchers noticed that the groups were forming and bonding within each group as they had hoped. The Rattlers soon began marking the baseball diamond as theirs with a flag, with their flag, the Rattlers' flag, warning the Eagles the consequences for touching or removing the flag or stepping on their territory. It was upon first meeting of these two groups that they were extremely hostile with one another, using aggressive language, basically shit talking each other, like Eagles rule, Rattlers suck sort of shit. Um, it got pretty heated.
When you're a jet all the way.
From your first cigarette to your last dying day. No, don't get me going there. I haven't. I actually never did West Side Story, so I actually don't know the rest of that song. And I also don't want to get copyright struck. Anyway, so it was around lunchtime on that same day that the two groups are informed of the potential trophy that they could win to beat if they beat the other team in a game, as well as prizes of pocket knives, which for 1954 that's a pretty schwanky prize for a little kid.
Let's get these kids to fight each other, and let's
Yep.
also give them pocket knives.
Yep. We're gonna tie their arms together, and they're gonna again. It's West Side Story, baby. They're gonna start slashing each other.
Oh boy.
It'll be great. So they would basically be doing a series of competitive events against each other, team versus team. Rattlers versus Eagles. They would do baseball games. They would do tent building challenges. They had cabin checks, like everything that you would expect out of a camp story. Like they had tug of war the entire nine. During the first day's events, the Rattlers ended up taking the win. They took two of the events that day, I believe, were the tug of war and the baseball game that day. And it was only because they had two more kids than the Eagles did, obviously. Let's see, where'd I go? Flag from the benefit. Oh, so it was whatever like bullcrap that happened with the unsportsmanship with these kids. It just went out the window. They were not cordial with each other whatsoever. It was like bad blood playoffs, like sort of shit.
Yeah, yeah.
Like in all honesty,
Someone was surprised to observe this.
I sincerely feel like I'm telling a I sincerely feel like I'm telling a 30 for 30 or something like that with these kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what would end up happening is that the Rattlers were like absolutely, stoked on their win, but the Eagles ended up coming back and saying like, dude, you can't fuck with us, and they ended up taking the Rattlers flag from that baseball diamond and burning it.
Oh no!
They burnt it.
Oh no!
The Rattlers did not
No
take too kindly
way!
to that, let alone the
Oh
fact that these
boy!
researchers allowed these boys to play with fire.
I
The
bet it
Rattlers,
was on.
oh dude, it was on. The Rattlers would retaliate in the dead of night by storming the Eagles' cabin out the window. Out the window, excuse me. They would storm the Eagles' cabin and they would flip the Eagles' bunk beds, steal their clothing, their comic books, their candy, their snacks that they brought for camp, kicked out the screens for the windows. The Eagles would also retaliate in the same manner to the Rattlers the following afternoon during lunch. The Eagles invaded the Rattlers' cabin and basically did an equivalent amount of damage. It was later in the week that, again, it was just pure hatred between these two. This was like Wings Avs. This is like uh, the Patriots versus everybody. I don't know too many other sports rivalries. I'm sorry. Anyway, so
Yeah.
yeah, the Bulls and Pacers. But
Boston and the Yankees.
oh yeah, the Red
They
Sox and
they
the Yankees. Yeah, no,
they fucking
that's a good
hate
one.
each other.
This is very true. But I think just Boston people just hate every other team except for theirs.
Yes.
Yes.
I think everyone hates the Cowboys.
Yeah, even though they're supposed to be America's team, but
I think that's why. Like,
Jeez.
why isn't everyone else America's team?
Why isn't anybody else America's team? That's a very solid
I
question.
think people hate them because they win all the time. You know,
It's a
that's a good way
possibility.
to get that's a good way to get half the people to like you and the other half to be real mad at you.
Very true. So this is a mock flag that the Rattlers ended up making to make fun of the Eagle kids. Uh, and they, it just again, it just got heated and more heated. And basically, at the end of the first week, the final competitive portion the of the experiment was a treasure hunt, and it turned out that within the time that they were basically being timed for how quickly they could find this treasure, and it turned out the Eagles ended up winning, and they ended up winning the whole shebang, and the Rattlers were very, very disappointed and decided to exact the revenge and so forth. The tournament was tied up until that point, and the Eagles just up and took it underneath the Rattlers. Uh, while the Eagles were celebrating their win by taking a swim in Moccasin Creek, the Rattlers broke into their cabins and stole the medals, pocket knives, and other things that the Eagles had just won for their efforts. Like, yeah, again, this is like some salute
This
your
is
short
great.
shit. This is like
Yeah.
some real salute your short shit. So, uh, this basically caused the two teams to basically start duking it out again, a la Lord of the Flies. They're just going at it, beating the snot out of each other. And it was basically pretty much uncertain whether or not the researchers actually intervened or not. It was kind of questionable if they actually intervened when the boys were fighting each other. Um, it, but it was at this point again that the researchers were flat certain that these kids absolutely despised each other, and that there was that and
It
that
sounds like it.
when it came to the reintegration process, it's going to be a very interesting one. Let's see here. The boys eventually, it was like the middle of the second week, they were put onto stage 3, which would see them eating together and participating in group activities like watching movies in the mess hall. Uh, and it did not end well. During the movie nights, kids would fight over seats and still bicker and argue. During the lunch times, it was noted that one time, or during a mealtime one time, kids started a food fight, and it was also, despite all of this, that they were free to sit with whomever. The boys would still sit with their respective groups, their respective in groups. The tensions became so high that the insults lasted through throughout everything. It was like a full heavyweights food fight, like from what I read. Um, another another adversity the researchers intervened with was telling the boys that the camp could get a copy of Treasure Island for the kids to enjoy. But the camp didn't have the $15 to spare for it, so they asked the kids to pool their money together or figure out some way to help get the $15 or help with half of the costs to get the film. And the boys basically just started arguing with each other, and one group was saying that the other should pay and so forth and vice versa. um but ultimately they mutually settled on an equivalated payment plan, despite the fact that the kids with more to the group had to pay less than the kids who had less in their group. So the Rattlers ended up
Um,
paying less than the Eagles, and I don't think either of them, had the mathematical skills at the time to realize that. But it was just kind of a funny thing that I noticed. Um, but they mutually settled paying $3.50 each, so they came up with $7 to give to the. Uh, they gave them the $7, and they got to see Treasure Island. I'm sorry, that was also another photo I meant to show earlier. That was the trophy that the Eagles ended up winning.
nice.
Yeah, cute little dudes. Good for them. Um, So the final part of this experiment was that the kids were supposed to camp out in a more isolated area and pitch tents and so forth. And this would be a portion of the experiment where the kids would be literally commingling with each other. They would have to deal with each other. They were going to be in the back of a truck, basically, like an army truck that could fit all these kids. Um, let's see here. Uh, so the experiment was that at some point this truck would pretend to break down, and that the person driving the car would be like, "Well, I can't get it started. We're gonna have to try and pull it out to the rest of the way." And it would be to see if the kids would actually like put in the effort to work together. And as it turned out, as much as there was bickering and fighting and everything else, the two sets of kids got together, grabbed the ropes, and they began, although not very well, they ended up pulling the truck just slightly, but enough for researchers to say, yeah, they got together and worked together. That
Good enough.
the car started, the truck restarted, and the kids were overjoyed. They were so happy with each other. They ended up making an alliance. They began talking with each other more, and they had a really good time. Uh, it was after that that they would end up going on a trip to Arkansas. They did all sorts of sightseeing, did some more camping, and what was really interesting was at the end of the week was so on the evening of the last day, the boys were basically given an option. They could leave with their respective teams on two individual buses, or they could all leave on one bus together and travel back home together. Although there was some dissenters in the group, most of the boys in both groups were more than happy at this point to sit with the opposition. And
Good.
it was some, again, some Sandlot meets Heavyweights type shit.
Nonsense. Sounds nasty.
It sounds horrible, but again, like, I don't know. I went to a camp that was kind of like this. So, um, but what really, I don't know, kind of warmed my heart a little bit was there was a portion of the story where it said that the bus full of all 22 kids had to make a stop somewhere, or all 19 kids, they made a stop to go get drinks and stuff like that. And it was the Eagles who, with their winnings, ended up buying drinks for all the kids, like shared mutually drinks with everybody. I thought that was a very sweet gesture.
All right.
Yeah, but unfortunately though for Sharif, he was definitely ridiculed for his practices, and let alone the moral and ethical codes that he probably had broken amongst other psychiatrists. Um, but what was found is that, again, despite having similar backgrounds, not having any real differences amongst each other, you could still find something to make people piss off with each other with.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. That's the finding. That's
You
what at the end of
that's
the day,
that,
that's the big
that's the yeah, that's
that's the
pretty
big
much,
revelation that came out of this. Yeah,
yeah,
people
out
are
of out
shit.
of
That's
traumatizing these kids, and out of
yeah.
traumatizing,
Wow, you can really make anyone fucking hate each other. Isn't that isn't that
but yeah, it was definitely scrutinized for a long while, and it still is to this day. Yeah, again, the kids for the most for again were not consenting to this type of experimentation. Let alone the parents didn't realize that these kids were going to be put through that type of psychological trauma and ridiculousness. Like, let alone, again, like a lot of a lot, it's been reported that the researchers didn't actually intervene on a lot of the fights that a lot of these boys had. And again, this is like, again, like you said, Yanks socks. It's, they're beating the fuck out of each other.
yeah.
It did not end well for whoever got in those scraps, because again, there was no actual adult to intervene, let alone these people weren't trained on how to intervene with children like that. But yeah, but again, in the end, it was nice that the boys ended up getting along with each other. They got to they got to share sodas and all that jazz. I think that's like a nice you know bow on this fucking horrible experiment.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's nice.
yeah, that's probably the only positive thing about that. Everything else is just trauma for these kids. But yeah, that was the Robbers Cave experiment.
Gross.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. But again, very fascinating stuff. Again, it was very interesting to read about, and it basically inspired me to do both of these subjects today. Um, what was it? I think we were talking a lot about Stephen King lately, and like
Sure.
Stand by Me
Okay. All right, sure.
is like one of my kind of is definitely in my top 20 movies. I have not read the book yet, but just hearing this type of a story, it just it's that like it's surviving horrors to and coming together in the midst of adversity. I again do not agree with the experiment, but I definitely give the thumbs up to the kids for being bigger than the adults. I would say at least eventually becoming bigger than the adults.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
That's
but
a good way to look at it.
yeah, um, yeah, I think that's it, man. That's all I got for today. That was
Awesome. Thank you.
yeah, no
Good
problem.
job.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
yeah, it was very again a very fun project, very fun to read about. Um, yeah, again next week I definitely promise we're gonna be talking about the Demon Core. That'll give you some more time to actually like properly like say ridiculous uh compounds and mixtures and so
Okay. You
forth.
want to talk about the chemistry going on.
Or at least I would like to try. I don't know.
Okay.
I flunked chemistry, dude. So I don't.
I know a little bit. I used to know I'd used to know a little bit about how these things happened.
Yeah, but it was very fascinating to me, and I wanted to make sure that I was doing my due diligence and discussing like the demon core or um similar type experimentations into criticality. It's
Cool.
stupid. Again, I thought that was like one of the only ones. You would think that'd be a one and done experiment to never do that again. Apparently, continued. There was like one in Portugal. There was one in Sweden. There were like all sorts of goofballs trying this shit. So
Yeah.
maybe I'll find a handful of those to talk about next week. But yeah. But do you have any soap stuff coming up? Anything rad coming up? Or is that part of the I don't know. Have you read that new Twitch deal or whatever for branded stuff? I don't know.
I yeah. Well, I did, and it doesn't really affect. I'll,
Yeah.
how much do you want to talk about it? It doesn't really affect me like
Yeah.
advertising for myself or me running my own
Yeah.
ads or ads for
Yeah.
anything
I
like
just didn't
that.
want to like screw you over if it got you in trouble. But yeah,
No,
dude. Yeah,
it's like
I'd love to hear about the soap stuff you got coming up.
oh, I was asking how much you want to hear about the Twitch thing.
Oh, Dish, man. This is
Because
interesting.
it's kind of like they've been pushing this like advertising program, where they want you to like you can sign up through Twitch for a certain, you can like they were like now you can pick which deals you want and you'll get a bigger percentage of the ads when you run them on your
Hmm.
so you sign up for which ad programs you want to be part of. So they've been
Right.
pushing this whole ad program thing and it's honestly trash. Like
Really.
no one in my position is going to make any money off it. No one
Hmm.
in people in my position make sense on advertising every month and it
Yeah.
did not significantly change. And people, even going up the tiers from
Right.
me. Like other people are still not. It still was not significant enough of a change on several lower tiers for anyone to give a shit about. And so now something that's happening is that much like YouTube,
Hmm.
people who aren't able to make a living taking those advertising deals are taking
Hmm.
outside advertising deals from Shade Rado Shadow
Oh, Shade,
Raid,
Raid Shadow
Raid
Legends.
Shadow Legends and
Yeah.
putting like the Raid Shadow Legend logo on on their stream and
Hmm.
playing the ad during their stream instead of playing Twitch's ad through Twitch's system that
Hmm.
Twitch benefits from. So and Twitch has already rolled this back, but they came out today and they were like, if you have someone's logo on your stream, it's got to be 3% of your stream. You cannot play ads directly embedded in the stream that you're streaming because you have to use our Twitch ads, our approved Twitch ads. And people have already been doing it the other way. So Twitch was basically saying, stop making money, go back to not making money with us.
Hmm.
And Twitch has already rolled back this statement based on the reaction
I would
from
certainly hope so.
everybody, which was negative.
Oh
Yes.
yes, absolutely.
So
Well,
that's
that makes
that's what
perfect
happened with
sense.
Twitch today. My position remains fuck Twitch. Everything they do is wrong. They're a bad service. Uh,
But that's unfortunately this is where everybody is. These are yeah, and
it's where people are for a certain type of thing.
yeah,
There's other places.
yeah. I
There's
mean,
other things that people
YouTube's
can
okay.
do.
YouTube's okay.
Yeah, YouTube. Well, first of all, yeah, YouTube seems. I don't know what has gone on YouTube, and there have been various things people have been mad
Hmm.
at YouTube over the years, but I don't think YouTube has really done anything major to specifically say, well, like, since we've demonetized your videos, you are not allowed to get sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. I don't think YouTube has done something like that, which is what Twitch is doing.
Yeah,
Twitch is saying no Raid Shadow Legends.
you get no Raid Shadow Legends. You get no
You
World
gotta
of
you
Tanks.
gotta do it through the special Raid advertisement
There will be no
that we
gamer
have the
stuffs for
dealing with.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Twitch. Yeah, they're all bad, and that's what it is. We're gonna all gonna have to live in this world. Every platform is gonna be bad. If you want to put stuff on the internet, you're gonna be dealing with corporate assholes. So
Hmm.
good luck out there, little bros.
Indeed, indeed. Well, and then on that note, that was some again. That's super fascinating to know, and I'm gonna keep that in mind. I'm gonna try to read up more about it. But that's
You can
super
play your
interesting.
own ads. You can play ads for your own stuff. You can slap your own logos or whatever you want on the stream.
Just not like
Just not for some sponsor that, yeah,
mm,
some corporate sponsor.
I got
That's the deal.
it. Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, again, gang, this has been a blast. Thank y'all for joining us today.
Thank
It's been a very
you.
very interesting.
Maybe we'll talk to you on Thursday, Tony
Yeah,
Smith.
yeah, Tony, come on in. We'll play some more Fall Guys, or if you're feeling Fortnitey, we'll play some Fortnite. Like whatever you feel like jamming, bud. But yeah, that's gonna be it for today. That's been thought that was weird. Thank y'all for joining us. Hope you all have a good rest of your Tuesday. I will probably be back a little bit later to stream some games, but yeah. If you want to come hang out, just hit exclamation point Discord in the chat, and you can come join the Discord and figure out any other times that I'm streaming. Please follow Mr. CuyaDK here.
What's
He's
up?
awesome. He has some rad streams. He's got cats. He's got lights. It's a great time. He's got plants. Plants are great.
Yeah, all
But
those things.
all of those things. But yeah. Yeah, I guess we'll catch everybody next Tuesday. We'll be talking about the Demon Core. Catch y'all till then. Take care.